to Claire. Welcome everybody on this Monday afternoon to our crochet lace class featuring the lace petal shawl. My name's Claire. I'm going to be hanging out with you in the chat, answering any questions you've got there or passing them on to Darren as needed. Darren is showing off our pattern there on screen today. We're going to go through the techniques needed for this shawl. We won't have time to make the whole thing, but by the end of class, with a little bit of practice, you can go ahead and do that on your own. I'll go ahead and put the pattern link in the chat here in case you need that again. And again, if you've got any questions over the course of class, just use the chat and we'll answer them there. All right, Darren, take it away.
All right, welcome to class, everybody. So as Claire said, we are going to review all of the skills and techniques needed to make the shawl. And then we're going to review the pattern and go through. There's really only 5 lines of the pattern, and then you keep repeating those 5 lines. So we're going to go over those lines of the pattern so that you can understand exactly what's happening for each step. And then after you've had a chance to review it and practice a little bit, you'll be ready to start this shawl and to make it and have a fun, successful experience with the shawl. So there's just not time. I mean, we can't make the shawl in class. It takes a lot more than an hour to crochet a shawl. So the shawl, I have a sample here. I started a piece of the shawl, and the yarn that I'm using here is Heartland. It's a Heartland yarn by Lion Brand, and this is available on lionbrand.com or also on michaels.com. But today for class, we're demonstrating, I'm going to be using this yarn, which is Hometown Bonus Bundle. And this one is also available on lionbrand.com and michaels.com. Both of these yarns come in a great variety of colors and some multicolors. And the reason I like to use this one for demonstrating is because it's a nice thick yarn, and I feel like it shows up on camera well, so that way the students can see the stitches and see what I'm doing a little bit more clearly. So maybe you guys can let me know if you think that's true as well, because you're going to be seeing it here soon. So that's the yarn that I'm using. The original yarn in the pattern is Truboo. No, I'm sorry. It is a Lion Brand yarn called Cotton Bamboo. That is only available on lionbrand.com, but you could also, if you wanted to use a similar fiber, you could also use Lion Brand Truboo, which is available on michaels.com and lionbrand.com. And it also comes in a really wide variety of colors and is very pretty. So lots of good choices. You can use whatever yarn you want. Just make sure if you change the yarn that you buy enough yarn to complete the shawl, and that you use a crochet hook that's going to give you the appropriate gauge for whatever yarn you're using. So that's really all you have to worry about there. So if we want to go ahead and switch the view to the view of my hands, then we'll go ahead and get started into all of the fun. So this is the shawl I started. And
Darren, you're going to have to move your computer a little closer.
Thank you. Thank you. I always forget to do that. So is that better?
That's better. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So this is the shawl that I started. And I'm using the Heartland with this one. And after you do any kind of lace, one of the main things that's really going to add to your work and elevate it so that it doesn't look homemade, it looks more handmade, will be if you block it, and especially with lace, because that's really going to help open up the lace pattern so you can see all of the beautiful lace. Otherwise, it's going to look like a crumpled up spider if you don't. So the way you would block this would be to soak it in water. You can put a little wool wash or something in it, some kind of a non-rinse wash if you want to. And then you want to take it out of the water, roll it up in a towel, and like a jelly roll it up into a towel. And then I like to walk on it and press all the water out of it. And then you want to pin it out to the exact dimensions that you want it to be. And we're not trying to stretch it, we're just trying to shape it. So you can pin it out if you have blocking boards, that's the perfect thing. But you can use a yoga mat. anything really will work that you can pin it out to, and it's gonna, something soft enough to pin to, but firm enough that it's not gonna just pull back. You want it to hold its shape. And then once it's dry, then it will be open up and hold its shape very nicely. So that's how, that's a little bit about blocking for the finishing, okay? So I'm gonna move, any questions about that? We kind of started with the end, now we're gonna jump back to the beginning. Any questions about how you would block it or finish it or why you would do that? Alrighty then. So the first thing I want to just review some basic crochet techniques just to kind of get started. The first thing you want to do is tie a slip knot to get started. And you probably already know how to tie a slip knot. Here's one way that I like to do it if you don't know how to tie a slip knot, is if you lay your yarn out like this, you have the short tail, and you put the short tail over top of your working yarn, which is much longer. So this is called short over long. And you make a loop. You put your hand in the center of the loop and you reach under. You grab hold of the tail. You hold your tail and your working yarn together. And then you pull a loop back through. And that's your slip knot. And the reason I like this way of tying a slip knot is because when you pull the tail, that is what controls how big the slip knot is. And it's not so important in this project, but in other crochet projects, it's very important that the tail control the size of the slip knot. So it's a good idea to kind of get in the habit of doing it this way. So I'll show you one more time. So you lay it out like this. The tail is on top of the working yarn. You put your hand in the circle and then you sneak underneath. You grab hold of the tail and the working yarn. You grab a hold of the tail there. And then with your other hand, you want to hold the working yarn and the tail firmly. And then you just pull a loop back through. And I've got this great big slip knot, but if I use the tail, that will control the size of my slip knot. All right. And then you just pop that right onto your crochet hook and you're ready to start. Now, if you don't tie your slip knot like this, I'm sure it's fine. This is not, you don't have to do everything the same way everyone else does. But like I said, it is nice for some projects if the tail controls the size of your slip knot, because after you're finished, you can pull that and it'll cinch it up and close it up, like for the top of a hat. Like sometimes you don't want a big hole at the top, okay? Any questions about the slip knot? Doing all right? Okay, so just working a chain, holding your yarn, you just grasp your yarn in your hand, pick up your yarn, turn it down, and pull it through. And I like to hold my project right under where it joins to my, where my yarn joins to my hook. So I'll readjust my grip every so often, and then that makes it easier. So you just scoop up yarn, turn it down, and pull it back through. If you don't turn it down, then it just kind of gets stuck. So you probably know how to make a chain. So I just wanted to review it quickly just in case. Does anybody have questions about how to make a chain? Pretty basic. So once you've made your chain, so this pattern, I think it says to chain 82 or 87. So chain 87. So I'm not going to chain 87 and work through all of that, or else we'd be here all day. But I do want to review with how do you count your chain, because you want to make sure you have the right count. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is the slip knot on your hook does not count as a stitch. So we're just not going to count that one as a chain. And you're just going to count each one of these little kind of V shapes. So if you know how to knit, this kind of looks like a knit stitch. But if you don't know how to knit or not familiar with the knit stitch, what you want to look for is this kind of a V shape, and you can see how they all fit together. You just want to count each one of those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 12. Okay. So that's how you count your chain. So you're going to need to know how to do that. And a couple of different places where you can work into your chain. And you can decide what's best for you. You can just go through one strand of yarn like this. And just make your, I'm just doing single crochet here. And that's probably the easiest way. That's probably how I would do it. I like to do things the easiest way. Another thing you can do is if you look underneath and you can kind of see these bumps on the back of the chain, you wouldn't want to switch mid-chain. You want to make sure you're doing it the same all the way. But if you want to go through that bump, which is a little harder, just take your time and find the bump and then work through that bump. Now, what that will do for you, if you work through the bump on the back, it gives you a nice edge. And I have a sample, let me see. So this little swatch, when I started, I went through the back bump and it gives you this very nice edge, which looks like kind of like the top of a row of crochet. It gives you these little edges that look like this, like that little V shape that we were talking about. And if you go through the back bump, it gives you this kind of a finish and it will match the other end. So if you, once you continue crocheting and you finish at the other end, then both ends of your shawl will have a very similar edge. And if you don't do it that way, it gives you this edge, which still looks pretty good. It doesn't look much different, but it doesn't quite line up as nice as the V. So you can kind of see here two kind of differences. It's a subtle difference, but it is worth it. So any questions about how to make a chain, how to count your chain, or where you want to work into the chain? So you can make that decision for yourself. Any questions? Okay, we're feeling pretty good?
I think we're pretty good.
Okay. So here's a swatch that I was practicing on, and this is just one repeat of the lace pattern. And you can see what we're going to be making are these. Pull that out of the way so we can see. We're going to be making these. It almost looks like a fern leaf to me. It looks almost like a leaf or this like little kind of pyramid or triangular shape. And on each side of it are going to be these kind of clusters, which kind of fit together like this and make this little triangle. So we've got our clusters with our triangle, our leaf, if you think it looks like a leaf. And then on the other side, we have two clusters with a triangle. And then on the next row, it alternates. We have kind of our leaf shape, our clusters with our triangle, and then our leaf shape. So after you do two repeats, that's kind of what you're looking for. So that's what it's going to be kind of shaping up to look like, right? I think it's very pretty. I really like this little, is it a leaf? It looks like a leaf to me. I don't know. Maybe you guys see something different, but that's the basic shape we're going to be working into. So let's look at the pattern. Let's jump to the back. It's not a bad idea to read through your whole pattern before you start, but then if you want to look for these abbreviations, this is going to tell you everything you need to know to make the project. So we're going to need to know what a double crochet, we're going to need to know how to single crochet, we're going to need to know how to chain, and then these other ones are just repeating and skipping and basic information. So let's just look at a single crochet just to review, for the sake of reviewing. So a single crochet, you are going to just, the first thing is you enter the stitch, you do not yarn over, you enter the stitch, and then you bring up a loop, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, bring it through both. Okay. Enter the stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, bring it through both. And that is single crochet. Are we all pretty familiar with that one? And then a double crochet, you start with a yarn over, enter the stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, bring it through 2, yarn over, bring it through 2. Start with a yarn over, enter the stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, bring it through 2, yarn over, bring it through 2. Okay, so that's single and double. Any questions about that? Do you want to see it again, or we feel good about it? How are we doing, Claire?
I think we're feeling pretty good. Quick question on the swatch you had showed previously. You said that was 1 repeat of the pattern, right?
Yes.
Do you remember how many stitches that needed?
22.
All right, there we go. Just in
Yeah,
case
you're
anyone wants to
working into
adjust the
22
shawl.
stitches. Yeah, you're working in. So if you were chaining, like I chained 23, so I had 1 stitch for my single crochet, and I did a couple of rows just to give me something to work into. And so I was working with a total of 22 stitches once I started my swatch. 22 stitches. Okay. Any other questions?
I think we're good to keep going.
Okay, so it's pretty exciting though, just by learning those 2 basic stitches, well, chaining, so 3, chaining, single, and double, we're able to create so many beautiful designs. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. You don't really have to know all that much to do some pretty wonderful things. Alrighty, so now that we're ready for the pattern, it just gives you everything you need. It gives you the size. You can make it as big as you want. You can keep going longer. If you do change the yarn and use a bigger yarn, then of course your project will be bigger. It'll be wider and longer, but you can always stop at 62 inches. Like whenever you reach whatever length you want, you can stop. You need whatever yarn you're going to use. Crochet hook that's appropriate for that size. Large-eyed blunt needles for finishing. And I also recommend that you have a couple of stitch markers on hand. Stitch markers always come in handy. So try to have a few stitch markers on hand. If you match the exact gauge, then your project will be the exact same size. But for a shawl, that doesn't really matter if it's 2 or 3 inches bigger or 2 or 3 inches smaller, nobody's going to care. So it's perfectly fine. So for the shawl, we're going to finally start. You want to start out with chaining 87. So you just want to kind of loosely chain. Sometimes people run into the problem where their chain becomes very, very tight. And one way to overcome that is to work your chain with a hook 1 size larger than what you're going to make your project with. And then that way it'll be looser. And then when you start with row 1, switch to the other hook. And then that way your chain will be a little looser and it won't feel so tight. I know a lot of people do have a problem with their chains being very tight. So first row, we're going to do 3 double crochets in the 4th chain from the hook, skip 4 chains, 4 double crochet in the next chain, and then we see this asterisk. And whenever you see an asterisk, usually that means you're going to be repeating something, like between from the asterisk to the next kind of marker. So chain 3, skip 3 chain 3, skip 3 chains, single crochet into the next chain, chain 3, skip 3 chains, 4 double crochet into the next chain, skip 4 chains, 4 double crochet into the next chain, repeat from the asterisk to the end of the row. Now that sounds like a lot of words. I said a lot of words. I said a whole lot of things. So one thing I like to do is I like to use Post-it notes to help me keep track of where I am in my pattern. And so I will mark out things so that way my eye can easily find the exact spot. And sometimes I will even mark out the row below it. And then that way my eye only goes right where I'm looking. So all I'm looking at is this information right here. And sometimes I will also, you can kind of make any kind of notes here. So if we're going to chain 3, skip 3, single crochet in the next chain. So there's a comma there. But if you want to like kind of make a break anywhere so that way you're like doing each kind of step separately, whatever helps you to kind of keep track of it, keep track of where you are. So it starts out 3 double crochets in the 4th chain from the hook. And I worked up this a few rows just because it's kind of easier for you to see what I'm working into if I have a few rows of single crochet instead of just with a loose chain. And I can certainly show you how to do it both ways if a question comes up, but let's start with this. So we're going to do 3 double crochets in the 4th chain from the hook. So we count our stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4. So basically we're skipping 3 and we're working into the 4th one. So 3 double crochet, and you just do them all in the same spot. So you do the first one just like normal. And then the second one, make sure you're going into the same spot and just a double crochet just like normal. And then a third one in the same stitch. Okay, and then that kind of creates this little cluster. Some yarn. So 3 double crochets in the 4th chain from the hook, skip 4. So we're going to count them out. This is why you need to know how to count your chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, skipping 4. 4 double crochets in the next chain. So yarn over, 4 double crochets in the same one. So 1, 2. So you've probably done 2 double crochets in the same stitch, but you might not have done 4 in the same stitch before this. And with lace, you frequently do stuff like that. And it creates, see how they're kind of leaning because we skipped those 4. It creates this kind of motion in your project where it kind of makes it lean different directions. And that's kind of what makes it very pretty that way. So skip 4, 4 double crochets in the next chain, and then now we start our repeat. We're going to chain 3, skip 3 chains, and then single crochet in the next chain. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and sometimes it might seem strange to be chaining like this in the middle of a project. We're going to skip 3, so 1, 2, 3, and then a single crochet. Right here, I'm going to attach it down with single crochet, and then chain 3, and then skip 3, 1, 2, 3. So we'll be going in here, and then 4 double crochets in the next chain. So 4 double crochets. So 1, 2. Don't split your yarn. 3. 4. So 4 double crochets in the next chain. Skip 4 chains and then 4 double crochets in the next chain. You're going to repeat from the asterisk to the end of the row. So what was that again? Skip 4, wait a minute, 4 double crochets in the next chain, skip 4 chains, and then 4 double crochets in the next chain. And So we're going to skip 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in the 5th one, we are going to do 4 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Any questions about row number 1? Pretty easy. Whenever I read out a crochet pattern, it always sounds like a lot of like instructions, but it's, if you just take it one at a time, it's really not so much, not so hard. All right, we ready to move on to number 2, to row number 2? So row number 2 starts off with chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, chain 3. Turn your work, and then 3 double crochets in the first double crochet. So that's this one right here. That's this guy right here. So we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. 3 double crochets in the first double crochets, and then we want to skip 6 double crochets. Now that sounds like a lot of skipping, but that's what it wants us to do. So we're going to skip them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to go into this next one. So we're skipping over all of that. So skip 6 double crochets and then 4 double crochets in the next double crochet. So you're going to have this a lot in this pattern where you're skipping 6. And whenever you're skipping 6, just remember you should be working in this last double crochet of these 2 clusters. You've got these 2 clusters that are kind of leaning together, and you're going to be skipping 6. And always when you do that, you should be working into this last one. So if you're doing your count and you skip, and for some reason you're off count and you're over here, like it says to skip 6, and like say maybe that's your 6th one for some reason, know that you're doing something wrong. So, you know, maybe you didn't do enough here, or something else is happening. But just whenever you're skipping 6, you're always going into the last double crochet of these 2 clusters. So we're going to work 4 into that. Oops, I'm splitting my yarn. All right, so 4, we skipped 6 and we did our 4. And we're going to chain 3, because now we're starting with our asterisk. So this is going to be our next repeat. If you look right here, right there's the asterisk. So chain 3, single crochet in the next single crochet, chain 3, and then 4 double crochets. So let's just jump into that. So I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and then single crochet in the next single crochet. And every time, again, when it reads the single crochet in the next single crochet, it should be like the next one. Like if you, let's say, like somehow you were here by mistake and it wanted you to do that and you had to like go a long way, then you know something's wrong. It should be pretty much just the next stitch. So this is, it's kind of like a marking place. Like when you're working the pattern, when you're single crocheting in that single crochet, you kind of know you're on track and you're in the right place. And then we're going to chain 3. And then 4 double crochet in the next double. So 4 double crochet here. Okay, so 4 double crochet in the next double crochet, skip 6 double crochet, and then 4 double crochet in the next double crochet, and then you're going to repeat from the asterisk to the end of the row. Okay, to the end of the row. It's just so we're going to skip 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Any questions? On anything we've talked about so far? It's pretty straightforward, actually.
Question about, and I answered in the chat, but I'll say it out loud in case people aren't reading the chat. If you could do a foundation single crochet rather than a regular starting chain for this pattern.
I think so. I mean, what do you think, Claire? I feel like it'd be all right.
Yeah, you definitely could. I just answered that because that's going to leave you with a solid edge at the bottom of the shawl, sort of like what you've got on your swatch there.
Yeah.
That I would just duplicate it at the other end by doing the last row as a row of plain single crochet. And then your 2 ends of the shawl are going to match.
Yeah. And I mean, if they don't match, it's not the end of the world either, right?
That too.
People aren't going to be like examining the ends of your shawl to make sure they both match. You'll probably have it draped in an artistic way, or you'll have it like pulled up in a shawl pin or something. So, it's probably going to be all right either way. What do you think, Claire?
Yes, I don't think the crochet police will come and get you.
Although they might. Okay, so then row 3. But if you ever have a question like that, I always say just try it. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you might have to rip it out and start over. But maybe it's a great idea. Who knows? So, but that's really the only way to know for sure is to just go ahead and try it and see. Okay, so we're going to do 6 chains. We're going to chain 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that counts as a double crochet and a chain 3 on this row and all following rows. And we're going to turn. We're going to work a single crochet between the next 2 groups of 4 double crochet. So we've got a group of 4 double crochet and a group of 4 double crochet here. So we're going to do our single crochet in this like little bridge kind of in the middle. So single crochet, just going to go in that hole and then single crochet. And that's all there is to that. And then we start with our asterisks. We're going to chain 3, skip 3 double crochets, and then 4 double crochets in the next double crochet. So we're going to chain 3. Oops. 1, 2, 3. Chain 3, and then we're going to skip 3. 1, 2, 3. And that puts us right here on the last one. And then 4 double crochet.
Back up a little bit, Darren, there.
Can we do what?
Did you just work your single crochet? Was that into the chain gap or into a stitch?
I just work it into, I don't work it in here because if you do, you're going to leave that little, I went into the gap. I went underneath. What would you do, Claire? Is that how you would do it? I just felt like it looked neater.
Yeah, I think that is going to sort of open up and emphasize that space a little bit more.
Otherwise, you'll end up with.
Yeah, otherwise you get that sort of little piece of yarn trailing there, which might get caught on something, I think.
Yeah, I think this gives it a much nicer. Yeah, so I just went under. Just go under all of it, kind of in that big hole, and then do a single right there. And then we're going to chain 3. and skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and that puts us right here. And we're going to do 4 double crochet. Make sure I'm reading the pattern correctly. I'm off track now. So we chain 3, we skip 3, 4 double crochet in the next double crochet, and then we're going to skip the chain 3, single crochet, chain 3, and then do 4 double crochet in the next one. So there's a lot of skipping over things, like skipping 6 stitches and skipping different areas in this. So it might feel like you shouldn't be skipping. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be skipping over 3 double crochet, chain 1, and 3 double crochet. We're going to skip that and we're going to jump to this one. But what that's going to do is, because these two, there's so much space, but because we have these clusters, it's going to kind of force them to lean together and kind of create that little triangle we talked about. And then it's going to finish up this kind of leaf shape. So it's going to kind of force it to create this shape. So we're going to go over here and do 4 double crochets, and then we'll look at it. All right, so let's look at it. So we skipped over all of that space, and look what it did. It created this kind of triangular shape here, which finishes off our leaf. To me, it looks like a leaf, but it finishes off this shape. Maybe it's an arrowhead, I don't know. But because we're skipping it, it forces them to lean, and that, again, it adds motion and shape to our piece. So that's kind of what lace, how you kind of create lace, is you make these openings, and then you do increases and decreases and different things sometimes, or sometimes just by skipping, it creates the motion and the movement in the piece, okay? Any questions? Grab yarn. Do 4 double crochet in the next one, chain 3, single crochet between the next 2 groups. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to single crochet. So again, we're going to pick up all of this. We're not going to go through here. We're going to pick it all up, and that kind of closes off that little section, makes it look very neat. So we do that, and then you repeat it. You repeat everything we just did until you get to the end of the row. So when you're making the shawl, you'll actually repeat this several times. And then when you get to the end of the row, you're going to chain 3 and then double crochet in the top of the beginning chain. So that the beginning chain was right here. So we're going to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do a double crochet in the top of this chain over here. Not splitting our yarn as we go. And then that is row 3 finished. You can start to see, so we finished off this shape, and now we're starting our next version of that there. Any questions? How are we feeling about all this?
It's certainly a lot of skipping and a lot of reading.
Yes. I find crochet patterns a little more difficult than knitting ones, because they're telling you what you're going to do on this row, but then they're also telling you everything that happened in the previous row. But to me, it sounds like a lot to keep track of, when really it's not, but we can easily get overwhelmed if we let ourselves. So row 4, we're going to chain 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. turn your work. And then we're going to single crochet in the first single crochet and then chain 3. So single crochet there. So into that single crochet. And then chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And you see now we're creating this next like little section there of that little design. All right, so we chained 6, turned, single crochet in the first single crochet, chain 3, and now it starts with our asterisks. So we'll be repeating from here. 4 double crochet in the next double crochet, skip 6 double crochet. So 4 double crochet in the next one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to skip 6. And because I've counted it out so many times, I know that means I'll end up right here, but let's count it together. So we're skipping 6 double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're skipping 6 going into that one. And you can count them by counting these V's on the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going in here, or you can count the posts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can maybe count it out both ways to make sure you're getting to the exact spot. And then I'm going to do 4 double crochets. Always refer back to your pattern to make sure you remembered it correctly. Two. Oops, 3. Okay, 4 double crochets. To 4 double crochet, the next double crochet, chain 3, single crochet in the next single crochet, chain 3, and we're going to repeat from the asterisk to the end of the row. And once you get to the end of the row, so remember, you'll be repeating this several times because I'm just doing a tiny swatch. So we're going to repeat from the asterisk to the end of the row, and we're going to double crochet in the 3rd chain from the beginning chain. So that's eventually what we're going to be doing. So we're going to chain 3, single crochet here, chain 3, then we're going to finish with a double crochet. So remember here we chained 6. So 1, 2, 3. That's the 3rd one. So we're going to double crochet in the 3rd one. Okay, and then that is that row finished. You can see we're creating this kind of leaf pattern here and here. And then in the center, we have this kind of center triangle here. And then once you do row 5, once you've accomplished row 5 and you understand how to do it, then you're set because that's it. You just keep repeating this over and over until you make it as long as you want. And that's pretty exciting because you don't need to do a lot of crazy, it might look very complicated and it might seem like you have to learn a lot of new techniques, but you really don't have to make some amazing things. So chain 3, turn. Now we're going to do 3 double crochet in the first double crochet, And so we did our first one right here. So 3 double crochet. 2, 3 double crochet in the first double crochet. And then we're going to skip the chain 3, single crochet, chain 3. So we're going to skip all of this. And we're going to do 4 double crochet in the next double crochet. So again, that's what's kind of closing this little section off. Do 4 double crochet here. Okay. And so it's kind of what, see here, kind of created this shape. We created that last of that. So we skipped that. We did our 4 double crochet, chain 3, and then we're going to single crochet between the next 2 groups of 4 double crochets. So chain 3. And then do our single crochet here. Remember, picking up the whole thing. Chain 3. Skip 3 double crochet, and then 4 double crochet in the next one. Why did it say to skip? Oh. Chain 3, skip 3 double crochet, and then 4 double crochet in the next one. So 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochet in the next one. Actually do the stitch, don't do what I just did. Okay, so 4 double crochet. And then you're going to repeat from the asterisk to the end of the row, working the last 4 double crochets in the 3rd chain from the beginning chain. So we're going to, that's the last chain from the beginning chain. Any questions at all, Claire? How are we doing out there? And then that finishes off this little section, this little triangle section here. And that's how your lace, you're going to be building these shapes row by row, and that is going to be what creates your lace. And then for the next step in the pattern, it's going to tell us to repeat rows 2 through 5 until the piece measures 62 inches, or of course, however long you want it, from the beginning. And you're going to be ending with a row 5 as the last row that you've worked, and then you're going to fasten off. So you want to do a row 5 as the last row, so that way it gives you a smooth finish here. And make it as long as you want. You could make it longer or shorter or however. But you can see it, and it does kind of give you this edge that's not real straight. It kind of gives you this decorative edge because of the way the lace is shaped. So if you do start with a foundation row or something, you may want to just do a row of single crochet on the end, or just something to make it look similar if that's something you want. Any questions about anything we covered? Because we're pretty much worked through the whole thing. How are we feeling about it? Do we feel like are we ready to tackle it, or how do we feel?
We've got about 10 minutes left here, just a little bit less now. What is your tip for weaving in ends on a lace piece like this, where you've got a lot of holes?
Well, my advice, so let's look at this one.
I sprung this on and he doesn't have a darning needle handy. Haha.
No, I have a whole bunch of them. If I can actually find one. So put this on your darning needle. Your darning needle. And so what I would do before I start, I would look at this because the goal is of course, we want our ends to be woven in in a secure way so they won't unravel, but we don't want it to show. We're not trying to add anything to our work. So the first thing I would do was, because we came through here, I would want to make sure I'm not going back, you want to make sure you're cinching this up here very nicely so that your last stitch is not going to come unraveled or come loose. And then just kind of look at how it's shaped, excuse me, and how it's moving. So you wouldn't want to just kind of go straight across. Of course, you wouldn't want to go across any of these holes because you're not trying to do anything like that. And crochet stitches are three-dimensional. So you can really kind of bury your yarn in the middle of the stitches. So I would probably maybe go through there like that. You just want to make sure that double check the other side to make sure you're not leaving any evidence on this side. And if you can't see your needle, then you know you did it right. Let me do it wrong. Okay, so there I'm burying my yarn inside of those stitches. Let me check the other side. Whoops, I can see my needle. So what that means is when I pull my yarn through, I'm going to be leaving a strand of yarn right there. Can you see that on the camera? Like, just make sure your needle's not showing at all. You want it to be buried inside those stitches. All right, so my needle's not showing. It's not showing on this side. I'm going to pull it through. And you don't want to pull it tight. We're not trying to change the shape or the direction of it, but just pull it through so there's no slack. And you might want to, you could kind of maybe go down this. Just make sure you're not changing the shape of anything. See how I just kind of climbed down that chain and then kind of goes there. And every time you do something, massage it out and check both sides to make sure you're not seeing anything. And then once you get down to this cluster, again, go down through there. Make sure you're going inside the middle of the stitches. Don't pull it too tight. Double check everything. And then I would go back here. And then pull it, this here, you do want to pull it tight. Snip it off flush, and then kind of massage it out. And then your end will disappear inside that cluster and you'll never see it again. So that's how I would do it on this piece. You might not want to go down through these chains if you're afraid you're going to mess them up. I could have just gone across here and then maybe up and then back across and then cut it. How would you have done it, Claire? Would you have just done it in this one cluster, or what would you do? I guess I could have gone here and then over.
Yeah, I'd probably try to stick more in doing it into the clusters. And then typically when I weave in my ends, if I know I'm going to block the piece, I wait to trim the end until after it's blocked and dry. Because if you're going to stretch or, move the fabric in blocking, your tail might be pulled a little bit more into the fabric.
Okay. All righty. Any other questions? And then again, she mentioned blocking again. I talked about that at the beginning. You want to, with acrylic yarn, you want to be careful with steam blocking. I know sometimes you can steam block things, and I have steam blocked acrylic yarn, but it can damage the yarn. It can make the yarn kind of crimple a little bit. So you don't want to ruin your piece. The safest thing to do with acrylic yarn would be to soak it in water, roll it up in a towel and blot it dry, and then pin it out to the measurements you want it to be so that it's open nice. Again, we're not trying to stretch it. We're not being too aggressive about stretching it. We're just shaping it. opening it up. Any other advice about blocking, Claire? How do you have anything to add?
I mean, there's the old adage that that'll block right out, but it won't actually fix any mistakes. But if maybe your gauge is a little bit off, you can sort of zhuzh it a little in blocking.
And sometimes though, if I've made a mistake, like sometimes you can like pin things in certain ways so that it does kind of maybe overcome a little mistake to kind of help hide it. So I've been able to do that in blocking sometimes. But
Sometimes.
excuse me. Anything else? How do we feel about it?
I am going to go ahead and put the link to the handout in the chat again, in case you needed that before we go. And then in case you liked this class, reminder that we did record this and it'll be up on the Michael's YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. And then if you want to see us again, we have some other classes coming up. Next week, if any of you are knitters, we've got our Knit Doctor class showing you how to fix some common mistakes. And then May 16th, these are all on Monday, May 16th, we're going to be doing some tapestry weaving. So if you've got a lot of yarn that you want to use up really quickly, tapestry weaving is a great way to do that. And then for the crocheters among us, which everybody should be, May 23rd, we are going to do a premium class on granny squares and showing you how to sew those together and make a market bag with those just in time for all your spring farmers markets. And those are all up on michaels.com and you can sign up for them now.
And if you have any questions as you're practicing, you can contact me on Instagram, send me a direct message. Maybe Claire will put my Instagram name in the chat. It's Mr. Woolly Bear. It's M-I-S-T-E-R spelled out and then Woolly Bear. And on Facebook, you can it's just my name. So you can just search for my name on Facebook, send me a direct message. And, I can usually answer them pretty quick. I don't get very many, so I don't mind helping out. And I hate the thought of you being like lost, like stuck in a lurch and not being able to continue. So just send me a message. I'll be glad to help. It's the best I can. So anything else before we go? Claire, have we ever finished early before?
I don't know. We might have to vamp
Not
a
very
little so we
often.
don't break our record.
You got 2 minutes.
I would say for anyone struggling with the lace, it really is about practicing and getting comfortable reading those big blocks of text that make up the row. And use your Post-it notes, use a highlighter, use several different colored highlighters, whatever you need to make it make sense for you.
All good advice. So, all right, keep practicing. The learning really happens once you get it in your hands and you're practicing. So that's when the learning will actually happen. So keep practicing and then let me know if you do have any questions. And thanks for coming to class. Have a great night.